Yeah, thank you. For us, the way I talk about data integrity is ensuring that your data is accurate, consistent, and with context, so that you can fully trust your data. So I'll touch on that in the presentation, but to be able to ensure that your data is complete, that it's in the right format, that it's been fed in the right way, that it's got the right context, that you're using it in the right way, and that it's accurate. So I'll just take the clicker to kick this off. Excellent. So that's the agenda I put together for today. Very brief intro on who Precisely is, and then I'll talk a bit about AI, how AI is using data, and some of the pitfalls around AI and data, and then looking more into data integrity and how that can enable organizations to avoid a lot of these pitfalls. And that includes getting your data into the platforms where you want to leverage AI. And then once it's there, being able to govern it effectively, being able to ensure the right level of quality, and then be able to proactively monitor it for potential issues. So just very briefly, who is Precisely? So we position ourselves as the global leader in data integrity. And as I mentioned, that's all around ensuring that your data is accurate, consistent, and with context. So we are a software vendor. We sell a data management platform. But in addition to that, we also have our strategic services arm that can help organizations no matter what solution that they use. And we also sell data products, particularly around location intelligence. So I'll get to that a bit later. So what is data integrity? Well, it's a journey. As you'd expect, every organization is different, and they're at different places on their journey. I sometimes show something similar to a tube map or a train map. But today I decided to use a kind of wheel. So if you look on the right, you can see accuracy, consistency, and context at the center. But to enable that, you need different capabilities. So I put integration, governance, quality, location, and enrichment, which are different capabilities that will help drive towards that accuracy, consistency, and context. And how do we do it? Well, we have something that's called the Data Integrity Suite. So this is a next-generation SaaS solution that contains 7 different SaaS services. You can see there: integration, quality, governance, geo-addressing, spatial analytics, and enrichment. And these are all built on top of a foundation layer, including governance, as well as our agent-based architecture. And this really means that they can benefit from the insight from each other service. So once you connect to all of your different applications and underlying systems, you can then run your quality on them, you can get insights, and essentially these services are cross-pollinating with each other. Also, another key thing about the platform is that we enable you to run wherever your data is. So if your data is in Snowflake or Databricks or Google BigQuery, we'll run the data there. There's no need to bring the data back to our cloud. We'll push it down there. Likewise, if it's on an on-premise system behind a firewall, like an Oracle or a SQL, we'll run it there using our agents. So that's just very high level about the architecture, just to let you know. But just taking a step back for one moment, talking about AI, some of the impacts of bad data. Well, first of all, how does AI use data? If you think about AI, all AI is based off data that you give it. So in a similar way to humans, we learn from experience and interacting. AI learns from the data that we feed it and from how it experiences it. So I put together just a really silly illustration to explain this. So imagine that I don't know the difference between a cat or a dog. It's not very hard to believe, and I want to create an AI app to help me distinguish that. So you're going to need to feed a huge amount of data, and you can see that in the first step around collecting data. So you feed in vast numbers of quality of photos, videos, other quantifiable metrics around cats and dogs. Then you go to learning from the data, and this is where it'll pass through the data, it'll uncover patterns, and it'll start to identify that, okay, cats have more pointy ears, dogs have longer noses, they're different sizes, and so on. And you can already see here that actually the quality of the data going in will directly impact what comes out of the machine. If I feed in a few photos of, I don't know, let's put in a crocodile or an elephant and tag those as cats and dogs, it's going to have some funny results when we get to the other end. Then you get to making predictions. This is where it's starting to move ahead from inference and start generating outcomes. So you'll feed it a picture and you'll say, is it a cat or a dog or neither? And then you can respond to it and give it a thumbs up if it's right. I'm sure all of you have done this with different chatbots. Give it a thumbs down if it's wrong and explain why. And that's where it gets better over time. And hopefully it can distinguish which is the cat and the dog at the end. So all of that to say, really, like the data that's feeding it will crucially impact the outcome. And here are some of the typical impacts of bad data. I mean, there are many others, but these are the main ones that I've seen through my research and through my personal experience. So for me, the number one there is bias. And lack of access to critical, relevant data leads to issues around bias. So ageism, sexism, racism, classism. There are other isms as well, but those are some of the big ones. And you may be familiar with some issues that came out in the press, like there was a HR application that prioritized applications from men. There was a tutoring company that effectively didn't consider applications from women over 55. So they were given a six-figure sum. But obviously, these things have got to come out. They've got to get caught. Effectively, it's leveraging the data that's been fed. Also, people are using image generators a lot. So on the previous slide, I used image generator to generate images of cats and dogs, but people are generating images of people. And those are often based on stereotypes, so racial, gender stereotypes, and so on. There's also inaccuracy. So, and this is where data quality really comes in. And that can, if the data is not complete, if it's not consistent, it can lead to issues like hallucination and AI failures. Like there was one last year that some of you may have heard about with an airline. I won't say which airline it was, but it was a national carrier for a North American country. And essentially, an end user contacted them about a ticket, and they were told, this is through the AI bot, that they could get a refund, and they could rebook, and then that would be refundable if there are any issues. And it turned out that the airline then said that they couldn't. So it all went to court, and basically the airline was trying to say that, no, we're not responsible for this AI chatbot. This AI chatbot is its own legal entity. We're not responsible for it. And the court said, no, you are. So there are these legal precedents that are being set, and organizations are learning from them. So yeah, got to be careful there. And the last one, irrelevance. So this is all around data context. Without access to all of the relevant context, you're missing a big part of the picture. So even a simple question like how many countries are there in the world, that can have different answers. So according to the United Nations, there are 195 countries. According to the ISO, that's the International Standards Organization, there are 149 countries. So both answers are correct, but they're correct based on different contexts. Also, if you're missing, property attributes, location attributes, if you're an insurer, if you're a retail organization, that all leads to the wrong context and incomplete data. So what does this mean around data integrity? Well, the way we see it, the answer, or at least a good part of the answer to this, is to ensure that you've got complete, trustworthy, and contextual data. And the analogy that I like is comparing it to like a chef preparing a meal. So the ingredients are the data, and the chef is the AI algorithm preparing the meal. So if the ingredients are the right ones, if they're fresh, and they're the correct ingredients, you're much more likely to have a great meal. The outcome will be much better. But if you've got the wrong ingredients, if it's stale, if it's bad quality, then good luck making that meal, and someone will probably be sick. So I'll just double-click on those briefly. So first of all, more complete data. So talked about bias being typically caused because you don't have access to all of the data. Organizations have got a wide variety of systems, and this is where we're helping them bring them all together so that they can run their AI on all of their data. So tapping into your legacy environments. So that could be mainframe, that could be IBM, that could be Oracle. Bringing them all, being able to convert into modern day formats so you can leverage that. But also freshness. in ensuring that the data is fresh. So if you've got a fraud detection algorithm, that needs to be done in real time, not on data that's hours or days or weeks old. It's got to be real time. We're talking milliseconds here. More trustworthy data. So this is all around data quality. With AI, there is, how would you put it, a multiplier effect. So if you feed in bad data, it's going to infer from that bad data, then it's going to generate even worse data. So I'm sure many of you are familiar with garbage in, garbage out. That's statements. Well, with AI, it's garbage in, garbage everywhere, basically. And of course, governance around that, understanding how sensitive the data is, where it comes from, what is the business context of the data. And then last, context is key, really, around the data. Being able to understand the context, whether it's location context, business context. Also, with AI, it's no longer just important enough to understand your own data. We're also talking about third-party data, particularly around context. So many organizations are leveraging us or other vendors to bring in location context, but you've got to ensure that that is fresh and that is up to date. If I look at US addresses, over the past 6 months, there's been a change in 2.5 million addresses. So if you're not constantly getting updated, that will be out of date. Your insights will be out of date. So if you're doing location modeling for an insurance company, you want to understand what are the most recent wildfire risks, flood risks. If you're a retail organization, you want to understand the demographics of your area, and potentially even in real time. So who lives there? What's the age range? What's the income brackets? What are the other points of interest around there? Where are the competitors? All of this really helps to build a better picture so that your models will be much more complete. So that's just a bit of insight into how data integrity can help avoid a lot of these pitfalls. I'll just touch on how we are achieving it with different organizations. So first of all, data integration. Most organizations, especially mature ones, have got a wide variety of systems, going from the really legacy, like the mainframes, to traditional relational databases, to lake houses, to flat files. And it's typically fairly easy to get data out of traditional relational databases. That's why I thought I'd mention some of these legacy systems. Those are a particular challenge, and we've got decades of experience in these. So mainframes, you won't be surprised to know that they host the most critical applications. So you can see some of the statistics, like 71% of the Fortune 500. Some of the ones that I read, which are, I think, even more interesting, 90%, so 90% of the world's credit card transactions come from mainframe. 68% of the world's production IT workloads come from mainframe, yet they only account for 6% of the costs of the IT workload sort of worldwide. So quite interesting. And it's the same kind of story for IBM I, which is a mid-range system. Over 50% of the core business applications run on that. So the point is, and don't worry too much about the big statistics there, if you've got strategic projects and you're not bringing in all of your data, you're going to be missing an opportunity. You're going to be missing a wider part of the context. And I'm talking to customers, on a regular basis who want to get into insights out of their legacy environments, whether that's to build new applications for modeling or to identify issues in their transactions. But the challenge there is that it's easier said than done. And we surveyed the marketplace, and some of the core challenges around getting data out of these environments is things like skills. There are fewer people who've got skills in these environments. Also, be able to bring data in real time from these systems. So this is where our solution comes in. So we can do data integration in different ways. So we've got batch data transformation, which is obviously bringing data in batch. Think of it to feed, for example, a data scientist who wants to run iteration, different models on data coming in. The data doesn't need to be real time. It maybe needs to be updated daily or hourly. Or real-time replication via change data capture. So that's what you'd use if you want to be able to identify fraud in real time and to be able to act on it. And we have flexible replication options. I won't go into detail, but if you've got any questions about these, please do ask me afterwards. So whether you want to set up single-way, bidirectional replication, and so on. And the core point here is that we have a wide range of partners. We run natively on all of these environments, on AWS, on Google Cloud, on Azure, but also the different hyperscalers, Snowflake, Confluent, on Kafka, and Databricks. And I'll just draw one of those out. So that would be the AWS partnership. So they chose us recently to be their partner of choice. They only chose us, they didn't choose anyone else to do their mainframe modernization. So this is what it looks like. If you've got data in your legacy environments, particularly mainframe and iSeries, we can replicate data out in real time into anywhere in the Amazon environment. So you can land it into your Kafka, into your MSK, into Amazon RDS databases, EMR, then you can run obviously your machine learning models from Bedrock or SageMaker in those. So, and this is running natively within AWS. You can just purchase that straight off the AWS marketplace. So just to wrap up on integration, these are the key sort of reasons why you'd consider us for integration. We have a highly resilient, fault-tolerant architecture, scalable, design once, deploy anywhere with native partner integrations. I'll just touch briefly on the other areas, and at a very high level. So once you've got your data in your different, in your, I'd say, target platform of choice, whether that's Snowflake or a Databricks, or just in Amazon S3, you want to ensure governance of it. You want to understand where it comes from, because data doesn't just exist for the fun of it. Organizations keep data for a reason, and that could be things like there are business processes attached to it. There are regulatory requirements. You want to be able to answer questions around, what is this data? Where does it come from? Can I use it? Should I use it? How should I use it? Is there a regulatory requirement around it? And so on and so forth. And we enable that by providing the ability to connect to the data layer, harvest all of that metadata from the bottom up, and then have a top-down approach as well, where you can define your organizational goals and objectives, associate the different regulatory requirements and policies to the data. And your different stakeholders can then input the information that they know around it from a middle-out approach. So you can get that full context of the data. But just to make it a bit more concrete, so just imagine a typical business challenge. Like, I'm sure many of you have had this before. You're in a meeting looking at a dashboard. Looks like our business is in trouble, and this dashboard could be Click, Power BI, Tableau, and so on. Let's just argue endlessly about the quality of it. Or let's go at more of a structured approach. So you can easily, through our governance layer, build out your goals. So maybe you want to increase your revenue through your different marketing campaigns, but that means that you need to understand your customer better. You need to build up business rules around that, and then that will translate down to the lower level technical requirements with your data quality stewards to be able to profile the data, understand any quality issues, fix them, remediate those, and then monitor it through, over time. And this is what it looks like within our solution. This is just a few different screenshots because this doesn't really lend itself to a demo this stage. You can see here, we're going all the way from Tableau back to the different data sources, so you can understand where the quality issue may reside. So you can go ahead and then fix that data. We can automate your business processes around the data. We can do some deep profiling to understand any quality issues in the data before then remediating it with our quality pipelines. And this is just a few high-level examples. And I've got to point out, we're leveraging AI and machine learning at different places along the journey to essentially do things like suggest rules, suggest improvements, suggest things that you want to fix. But I wanted to mention a specific thing about addresses, which is an aspect of data quality. When you think about addresses, like for instance in the UK, if you were to purchase a home, whether an apartment or a house, we typically say there are three things that matter. There's location, location, and location. So for those of you who've been listening, you probably realize I've said the same thing 3 times. But that's because it's important. So there's just some examples of aspects of location. So you've got how the building's made up, the different parcels. It's maybe not easy to read, but the demographic information, what's the footfall, what's the income levels, and so on. And precisely, we enable organizations to verify, fix their address, and then overlay all of the relevant information on that. So those are just some examples, whether it's natural catastrophes, travel time, tax boundaries, demographics, and so on, so that you can get a fuller context of their data. So I'm just wrapping up here. Obviously, in addition to that, we can provide location reports where you can drill down in a more graphical way to your data. So you may want to understand what's the crime rate of your environment, what's the flood risk, what's the fire risk. So we can provide all of those things and then monitor the data as we go along. So essentially, just to wrap up really, then you get to the end of the report, you can trust your data, you know where it comes from, you've got the full lineage of it, you've been able to fix the quality issues, and you've got the wider context of it, and that's what we aim to achieve with data integrity. So hopefully that was of interest. If anyone has any questions, I'll be more than happy to answer.